Good morning, dear students. Welcome to your Google Classroom. As you know, I have to complete 2 poems for you. Both of them are from W.B. Yeats, The Second Coming and Byzantium. These are the 2 poems prescribed for you. And I have given you an introduction to W.B. Yeats, William Butler Yeats. Then his theory of poetry, about the Gyre symbolism, about the Second Coming, an introduction to Second Coming, we have already done, and almost half the poem is over. And regarding Byzantium, we haven't done anything. But now, for the time being, see, I have introduced modern period for you. We have discussed the importance of the modern period. You know that T.S. Eliot is the father of modern poetry, and what is the theme of his poems? How the post-war world is presented by T.S. Eliot. Again, we have discussed how W.B. Yeats had presented the post-war world. The changes that has come upon the people, the spiritual bankruptcy, the spiritual barrenness of the modern man. We have discussed all these points. And again, Yeats uses many simples. Gyre simple or corn simple is very important, and I have discussed in detail in the classroom the Gyre simple. A gyre means a cone, the cone theory. Even the graphic presentation I have made on the board. But now I am going to do the Second Coming. I won't be discussing about the life of W.B. Yeats, his works in general, the themes and all in general, because we have discussed all these things. But I will be doing both the poems for you, because your university examinations are already announced. And so now I will begin with the Second Coming. The Second Coming, the title itself is very suggestive. It is a poem written, it's published in 1919. When I tell you the year 1919, the poem Second Coming was written in the year 1919. And so, what all are the ideas that comes to your mind when you hear the date 1919? The First World War is over. And again, you have the beginning of the Irish War of Independence. That is followed by the Easter Rising. Understood? And so, remember, W.B. Yeats presents before you the post-war period. You know that every war is destructive. And after a war, everything, the country will be in complete ruins. The people have to suffer hard. It will take years for the people and the country to come back to the original standard. And so, the First World War is over. The resources of the country are all spent out. And so, the country, the people, they are suffering. People, even the people of Europe, all over Europe, people are suffering hard. Nothing is left out. Whatever was there in the country was used during the war. And so, nothing is left out. The ordinary people, the working class people, they all suffered greatly. Everybody knew very well that it will take years for the country to come back to the original status. And so in the in-between period, people have to suffer greatly. And so you will see that after a great war, you will see that even the value system is shattered. That is why T.S. Eliot and W.B. Yeats talks about the spiritual barrenness of the modern man. Our people are living where they don't give any importance to any morality, any values. People are living in great tension. Our people are suffering hard. And so, remember, when I say the poem is written in 1919, remember the First World War is over. And people are suffering the after effects of war. People are living in a post-war world. Then, the second point, the beginning of the Irish War of Independence, followed by the Easter Rising. That also is over. See, you have studied Easter 1916 by W.B. Yeats, isn't it? And again, you know what is the content of the poem. What is Easter Uprising? That is, Ireland was originally a part of the great British Empire. But Irish people doesn't want to be a part of England. They wanted an independent status. And so people of Ireland struggled and struggled for freedom. And finally, the bill was passed in the Parliament granting Home Rule to Ireland. And so even after the bill was passed, people of Ireland didn't get their freedom. The British people, highly imperialistic they are. And so they are not ready to liberate Ireland and to give Ireland freedom. And so the Irish revolutionaries were very rebellious. And 15 young Irish men, they made a surprise attack on the British post office on an Easter Sunday, that is in 1916. And the British police caught all the 15 of them. All the 15 were killed on the spot. See, these 15 young men, all of them were caught and shot dead on the spot when in the rebellion of Easter 1916. Bear in mind this thing also. And so, when you study the poem, keep in mind in the background, what all things? It's the aftermath of the First World War. Then you will see the Irish War of Independence. And then you will also understand about, that is the background of the Easter Uprising. Easter Uprising, you understood, I hope. I have already discussed it in the classroom. But even then, when I do the poem, I have to tell it. Easter Uprising refers to the attack of the 15 young Irish revolutionaries. The attack is made on the British post office. And the British people, the British police arrested all of them. They were shot dead on the spot. And the people of Ireland became so furious and agitated when 15 of them were killed. And again, remember, the bill was passed in the Parliament, already granting freedom to Ireland. And so, the agitated people after the Easter Rebellion. W.B. Yeats, William Butler Yeats, writes this poem about these people. And so, again, you have the Russian Revolution also in mind during this period. And so, when you study the poem, The Second Coming, first of all understand that William Butler Yeats is writing about the post-war generation. What happened to the people? The poem is written in 1919. The people are totally frustrated, totally agitated. What are the reasons? First of all, the aftermath of the First World War. You know that after a great war, the country will be in complete ruins. For years, there won't be anything in the country. Our people have to suffer great poverty and shortage of essential items. And so people naturally, especially the youngsters, are all irritated. Yeats is writing about such people, post-war world, aftermath of the First World War. Then Russian Revolution is there in the background. And then the Easter Uprising. Easter Uprising is for the freedom of Ireland. Understood? And so, this is the background of the poem. And remember, I told you about the Con theory or the gyre symbolism. As a con, that is again, the poem is a dramatized presentation of Yeats's cyclical theory of the historical process, according to which human civilization moves forward in antithetical or dialectical epochs, each of approximately 2000 years duration. And so, that is the Con theory. According to this is called the cyclical theory of cones. That is, for Yeats, the interpenetrating cones is a fundamental symbol for Yeats. The interpenetrating cones. See, what is it? You know it, but even then I repeat. According to Yeats, what is the cyclical theory of the historical process? That is, every human civilization will remain active for a period of 2000 of years. After that is the con. That con will be, the con will lose the strength and a new one will come out of it. And so, you know that before the coming of Christ, you had a pagan civilization which lasted for 2000 years. And 2000 years back, Christ was born in Bethlehem. And that marked the beginning of a new civilization, that is the Christian civilization. And that Christian civilization is now coming to an end. See, when Yeats wrote the poem, the Christian civilization also has reached the end of its tether. And so the cones are separating. That is 2000 years back, Christian civilization was in its full strength. Christ was born in Bethlehem. And then you had the Christian civilization in full force in the world. Understood? This is the theory of cones. That is, every human civilization can remain only for a maximum period of 2000 years. First of all, we had the pagan civilization. It was replaced by the Christian civilization. But now, what is the problem? Christian civilization also has reached 2000 years. That means Christianity and Christian civilization also had lost its value. And now a new civilization is developing. And that is why people are behaving in such an odd manner in the post-war period. And Yeats says that, and there he uses the term second coming. The second coming is a biblical term. And when you hear the term second coming, you are reminded of the New Testament talking about the second coming of Christ. But this is not the second coming of Christ, Antichrist. Here you have the coming of a monster. And later in the poem, Yeats presents the image of Sphinx. What is Sphinx? A monster. Monster having the head of a human being and the body of a lion. A cruel creature. And so this monster, this cruel monster, is going to rule the world hereafter. And that is why people lost all the values, all the virtues, tolerance, love. And that is why people are behaving so inhuman. That is why in the post-war world, people have lost all their value system. They have become spiritually barren. T.S. Eliot also is lamenting about the fate of the modern man. He is saying, is this death in life or is this life in death? See, people are physically alive but spiritually dead. See, what about an individual of the post-war period? The human being of the post-war period shows signs of biological life. Eating, drinking, inhaling, exhaling, showing the signs of biological life. But spiritually, emotionally, he is barren. And the reason is found out by William Butler Yeats using his Corn theory or the gyre symbolism. And the picture, see, the interpenetrating corns is a fundamental symbol of Yeats, isn't it? And so he presents the historical moment of 1920. See, the poem was published mainly in 1921, even though it is written in 1919. And so here Yeats believes that the world is on the threshold of an apocalyptic revelation as history reached the end of the outer gyre and began moving along the inner gyre. Understood? That is, one corn is exhausted and the new corn develops up. And so, poem is a dramatized presentation of the cyclical theory of the historical process, according to which the human civilization moves in antithetical epochs, each having a duration of 2000 years. Understood? Human civilization means a civilization of 2000 years. Every civilization can stand only for a maximum period of 2000 years. And so pagan civilization disappeared. And 2000 years back, Christ was born. And it started the Christian civilization. It marks the beginning of a new civilization, the Christian civilization. And the Christian civilization was very powerful. People were very loving, considerate, tolerant, as our leader, Jesus the Savior. But now 2000 years are over. And so Christian civilization also lost its value, significance. And a new civilization has started functioning. Understood? And so, we are talking this post-war world and the post-war people belongs to this new civilization. And here you cannot expect anything good from the people. No love, no tolerance, no value system. Why? Who is the leader? The monster is ruling them. And so, remember, the title of the poem Second Coming has a biblical connotation. It is taken from the New Testament of the Bible, where it talks about the second coming of Christ. But here there is a difference. Here the coming is that of a monster. And what is the monster like? Monster is it's a terrible creature. It is having the head of a man, body of a lion. So cruel. And what was it doing all the time? For 2000 years, this monster was living in a desert. It was sleeping. Why it was sleeping? It has no relevance at all in the Christian world. And so it has no role in the Christian world. But now, after now the Christian civilization has expired, and now for the monster, it is the chance to establish itself. And so the cruel monster is slouching towards Bethlehem to be born. And that is why you have this nightmarish situation in Europe. And even the first 4 lines of the poem are very suggestive. I will repeat it even though we have done it in the class. That is a nightmarish presentation of the post-war Europe. After the Easter uprising, the people of Ireland, no values, no spirituality, no hope, frustrated people. And Yeats, in the beginning, he cannot understand the reason why people are like this, why the world is like this, why there is total anarchy in the country. But now he got the answer. Now the answer is clear. He understood the reason that Christian civilization has reached the end of its tether. It lost its significance, and a new monster is going to rule this world. This monster, it was sleeping in the desert all the 2000 years, but now it got a chance. It is coming to Bethlehem to be reborn. And so you have to expect worse things in the future. And now I will read the poem, and I will explain things in short. Turning and turning in the widening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the sender cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. That's very important. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer, the sender cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. See, in 4 lines, very significant lines, which shows a clear picture of post-war Europe before the reader. And so, see, turning and turning in the widening gyre. The gyre, it was circling, spirally rotating. Finally, it has reached the end of its tether. It refers to the end of Christianity. And then the second line, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. See, I know that you know, I have explained who is a falconer, then what is falcon and so on. See, falconry, it's a game which is frequently referred in Shakespearean plays. What is falconry? Falconry is a game. It is like a game. And it's a sport where you have a falcon and a falconer. Falcon is a big bird of prey, like hawk. Understood? Falcon is a big bird of prey, like a hawk. See, that is falcon. Falconer is the trainer. See, for the Elizabethans, it was a very favorite pastime. Actually, this is the sport. That is, the falconer, the trainer, and the falcon, the bird. Between them, there is a great intimacy. That is, even if the falconer opens the cage, falcon will go out but come back to the falconer at any cost. Such a great affinity is there between falcon and the falconer. The falcon will never go away from the falconer. And so, according to this sport, that is usually it is arranged in a marketplace. A falconer will come with a trained falcon. And in the midst of the crowd, the falconer will be letting loose the falcon. The bird will fly high, sit on a treetop. From there, it can scan the entire ground. And if there is a small chick or something, a small bird or anything, It will immediately come down, pounce upon it, kills it, eat it, and with the bleeding beak it will return to the falconer. This is the favorite Elizabethan sport, falconry. And so bear in mind the great relationship between the falcon and the falconer. And so a falcon will not go away from the falconer under normal conditions. But here it says that falcon had gone up, it will never return to the falconer. And so the relationship between the falcon and the falconer is cut off. Here it is a symbolic presentation. Falconer is Christ, and falcon is every individual soul of the modern period. Understood? And so that is, in this modern period, the relationship with Christ is cut off. That is the first line. Christian civilization has reached the end of its tether. And Christ has no influence on the people. That is why people are behaving so devilish. That is why people are so frustrated. That is why people are so hopeless. And then things fall apart. Center cannot hold. Usually you know that whatever is falling down on the ground, there is a gravity on the part of the earth. And so, see, that is why even if you drop an apple, the apple will go down, isn't it? That is Newton's theory, but that happens to everything. Why? The gravitational pull. Earth is exerting a pull. But even now, the earth cannot hold things together. That has become the condition of the post-war Europe. Remember in mind what all things are there. First World War is over, the Russian Revolution is there, it's over, then the Easter Uprising. Irish people struggling for independence. And so now this is the condition. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Anarchy means the situation in which there is no law and order. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Nobody can control the people. Nobody care for law, order, etc. And so this is the post-war world. Understood? In 4 lines, Yeats beautifully presents the situation of the post-war Europe. And again, the falcon sweep upward. The falcon, when it is let loose by the falconer, it rises up. And so it sweeps upward from the falconer in ever widening circles. That it traces the corn or the jaya. Understood? See, the falconer let loose the falcon. It goes in widening circle and disappears forever. Usually, wherever the falcon goes, it will rise high but come back. But here, nothing like that happens. And so, in the first line itself, it is suggested that Christian civilization has reached the end of its tether. Got it? And then the falcon cannot hear the falconer. That is, Christ lost the influence on the people. Falconer is Christ and falcon is every individual soul of the modern period. And then center cannot hold. Things fall apart. Center cannot hold. Even earth cannot hold things together. And mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Anarchy, no law and order. People are totally agitated, frustrated. They are doing anything. They have no tolerance. They are ready to fight with others, quarrel with others. They are inimical towards others, hostile towards others. And Yeats is so worried. And he is trying to analyze why people are like this. He knows that it is the aftermath of the First World War, the Easter Uprising, Russian Revolution. But even then, why people are like this? And there he gets the answer. Because Christian civilization has lost its strength. Christianity advocates love, tolerance, peacefulness, etc. That is over. Then, see, this is the key part of the poem. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, blood-dimmed tide, the tide dimmed by blood. That again, it also, the blood-dimmed tide refers again to the Easter Uprising, First World War, Russian Revolution and so on. And everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. Now purity, order, everything is lost forever. See, after the First World War, after the Easter Uprising, after the Russian Revolution. And now there is blood everywhere, violence everywhere. Innocence or purity of heart has no value. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. It refers to the anger and the despair of the people of the post-war period. And so now purity has no value in the post-war world. And only violence and hatred prevails. And there is no value for innocence. This is the condition of the post-war world. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. And so Yeats is wondering, why? Why people are like this? Why people are so cruel like this? Why there is violence everywhere? Why there is no law and order in the country? Why Christ and his teachings cannot influence the people? Even earth cannot hold people together. There is nothing good that can hold the people of this earth together. Why? Suddenly he gets the answer as a revelation. That is, surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. This is the reason Christian civilization lost its value and significance. And so there is a second coming. The second coming. Who is coming for the second time? Is it the Christ who is specified in the New Testament of the Bible? No. Hardly are those words out when a vast image of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. And again, this also I have explained. Spiritus Mundi or Anima Mundi. It is actually the spirit of the universe, soul of the universe. And through the subconscious memories, individual souls are connected to this universal soul. Understood? And so in your collective or through your collective unconscious, you are getting connected with the universal soul. Spiritus Mundi is the spirit. Another name is Anima Mundi. It means the soul of the universe. This is the original meaning, the soul of the universe. But for Yeats, it is the storehouse of images. Clear? That is, Yeats is thinking about why people are behaving like this. Suddenly he got the answer as a revelation. People are behaving like this because somebody is coming. Somebody's second coming is there. And then he looks into his heart, into his collective unconscious. Spiritus Mundi or Anima Mundi, it is actually the soul of the universe. It is the soul of the universe. And it is connected to the individual soul through the subconscious memories. And leave it. For you, the simple meaning is that for William Butler Yeats, Spiritus Mundi or Anima Mundi means the storehouse of images. In his mind, there is a storehouse and many images are there in his collective unconscious. You know that human mind is like a big reservoir holding all the feelings, emotions, everything of the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And Yeats looks into his subconscious mind. There he saw who is coming, whose second coming is going to happen. When Yeats looks into his mind, he saw the picture of a horrible monster. He was shocked. He says that it troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body. Body has the shape of a lion and the head of a man. A gaze, meaning the look, a blank look is there. No feelings are there for this monster. Not at all like Christ who was born in Bethlehem 2000 years back. And pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it rail shadows of the indignant desert birds. See, now Yeats looks into his collective unconscious. He got an answer. He understood who is making the second coming. It is a huge monster. But he doesn't give a name to that monster, but we know that it is Spence. See, that is the description matches with that of Spence. What is Spence? It's a monster, head of a man, and it has the body of a lion. Its eyes are blank and cruel. And it was sleeping in the desert all these years. Because when Christ was powerful here, this monster cannot even step into the land. And so he was sleeping in the desert. But now, in the post-war world, the monster understood that now it is his time. Christian civilization lost its value and significance. And so it is slowly walking. To where it is walking? To Bethlehem, because it is the place where Christ was born, and this monster is going to be reborn in Bethlehem to match the second coming. And when this monster is walking, its shadow falls on the desert ground. And in the desert, there are big birds of prey. And even these birds are frightened, seeing the shadow of this cruel monster on the ground. See, the desert birds are already very cruel and they are big birds of prey. But when they saw the shadow of the monster, they were totally frightened. And they are flying away. And then the darkness drops again. Hereafter there is no light at all. Darkness is suggestive of complete ignorance, darkness of the mind, darkness of the soul, a dark period where you cannot expect anything good but only evil. Darkness is suggestive of evil. And so hereafter, W.B. Yeats understood that you can expect only darkness in this new civilization. Why? A monster is going to rule the world. You can expect only evil in this civilization, in this new civilization. But now I saw that 20 centuries, 2000 years of stony sleep were vexed, troubled to nightmare by a rocking cradle. Rocking cradle, you see, the parallel is juxtaposed here. See, on one side, the baby Christ, infant Jesus born in Bethlehem. And on the other side, the cruel monster going to be born in Bethlehem. The two images are placed side by side, Jesus Christ and the monster. And so that will be the difference of the people of the new century. Then, what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. And so, Yeats says that this rough beast, it is walking to Bethlehem to be reborn. And so, in the first stanza, William Butler Yeats presents the situation. The corn theory again is presented. Again, remember always, the poem is a dramatized presentation of Yeats' cyclical theory of the historical process, according to which human civilization moves forward in antithetical epochs, each approximately of 2000 years duration. And so every civilization has a maximum period of 2000 years. And so 2000 years back, Christ was born in Bethlehem, and you had the Christian civilization where people practice love, tolerance, etc. And now 2000 years are over, Christian civilization also lost its significance, and a new civilization is yet to come, and here a monster is going to rule the world. And so in the first stanza, the situation of Europe is presented. And so the poem was written in 1919 and was published in 1921. And so Yeats had in mind what all things the First World War, the after effects of the First World War, Russian Revolution, and then the Easter Uprising, Irish people struggling for independence. And so bloody battles are there. There is violence everywhere. People are so frustrated, so cruel. And see, turning and turning in the widening gyre. That is here Christian civilization is exhausted. Falcon cannot come back to the falconer. Why? The relationship between the falcon and the falconer is cut off. Falconer is Christ, and falcon stands for every individual soul. And so now Christ lost his relevance. He cannot control his people. That has become the condition. And so, such a period of great violence, a bloody period is presented in the first stanza. A true picture of the post-war Europe is presented. And in the second stanza, the poet is trying to get an answer. Oh, why people are like this? Why people are indulging in violence and bloodshed? Why people are so cruel? Why Christ has no significance? Here he realizes that Christian civilization lost its significance. A new civilization is yet to come. Understood? A new civilization is yet to come. And here again Yeats looks into his subconscious mind, and he got the image of who is coming for the second coming. He understood that a monster is coming to rule the world, and this monster has the head of a man, body of a lion, and it matches with the description of Spence. This cruel creature, monster, was sleeping in the desert because in the last 2000 years it has no relevance at all. Now Christian civilization has come to an end, and so happily the monster gets up and walks towards Bethlehem, and that is the second coming that is suggested in the poem. And so here ends the poem. I think the meaning is clear to you. Okay, thank you.